You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. Bark and Wag is dedicated to protecting our dogs through advocacy, education, and supporting like-minded dog lovers by selling custom pet products. Saving lives by selling collars, scrunchies, and swag. Please check out Bark and Wag's website, barkandwag.com. That's BARKNWAG.com to see the awesome merchandise. Bark and Wag collars and leashes, collar covers, and decorative bandanas are perfect for your pooch. For the owner of the house, we have t-shirts, sweatshirts, long sleeve shirts, hats, and even coasters. We are expanding monthly, so be sure to check back. We love pooch ideas for podcasts and merchandise too, so send an email to polly@barkandwag.com with your suggestions.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to one of our favorite vets, Dr. Laura Brown, owner of Green Tree Animal Hospital in Libertyville, Illinois, to answer a question that actually I had. So welcome, Dr. Brown.
Hi, Polly. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. So this is kind of a odd one, but as you know, we have Chuck the Pug, and I'm on multiple Facebook and Instagram pages, and people have written about their experience of a pug's eye popping out.
Right.
And I just thought, oh my gosh, we're always grabbing Chuck and, hugging him. And I would have no idea what to do if all of a sudden one of his eyeballs popped out. So I wanted to have you on the podcast to find out, what do you do? And does it happen?
Right. Yeah. So maybe does it happen? Yes, it happens more commonly in those breeds like Chuck the Pug, the bulgy eye, brachycephalics, with the smushed in nose and, that shape of a head. It can happen. It's usually some sort of trauma event or something wrong in the back of the eye that's allowed that to happen. But most likely, in my experience, it's been some sort of trauma, like a dog fight, first of all, the good news is it doesn't happen very often.
Okay.
It just doesn't spontaneously happen. How about that?
Okay.
Dogs do get glaucoma. So what glaucoma is increased pressure in their eye. And so when that happens, they kind of look really bulgy. And depending on their anatomy, I suppose that would be possible secondary to glaucoma that it could happen. But when it pops out, it really doesn't fall out and hang out and hit the floor or anything like those Halloween, like a Halloween eye kind of thing. What happens is it just gets stuck out farther in their face and their eyelids kind of retract back. And there's muscles all around the eye and on every quadrant. And then there's the big optic nerve and a big blood vessel in the back. So it's next to impossible to completely come out of the orbit and fall out. I mean, it would take the last one that I had to treat was after a dog fight, and two dogs got in a scuffle and it was around the head. And so the eyeball proptosis is the fancy word for that. And there was a lot of bruising and the eyelids were, swollen and that had, was obvious something was wrong. Very much an emergency, very common for that. The goal is to save the eye and the sight in there. Probably 50-50, depending on who you talk to about the chances of preserving eyesight in that, depending on how traumatic it was, how long it stays out, that sort of thing. But definitely emergency when they come in like that, depending on if it's not life-threatening. Dogs can live with that with only one eye, right? So worst case scenario, if the dog was hit by a car, it's more important for it to be, if it's in circulatory shock and it can't breathe and there's, more life-threatening injuries to their chest or belly or something, those get addressed first. But if it's just their eye and there's no concussion or anything like that, then that we try to save them with. They have to go under general anesthesia, and you have to make the opening of the eyes bigger, like a incision on the side of their eye to open their eyelids bigger to try and put the eyeball back in and then close the lids around it to keep it in for a while. But there's usually a lot of trauma and swelling and bruising and things like that.
All right, so it's not going to be from hugging a pug.
No, that would be really, that would be really rare. I mean, you'd have to be hugging him pretty tight. And you'd have to have probably some glaucoma, like high pressure and stuff like that for that to happen. That would be a little unusual. However, I will say...
So Chuck is lost eyesight in one of his eyes. And
okay.
Would they take his eye out or no?
You could. Yep. So I have a couple patients, more than two. I have a few patients that are blind because they have no eyes at all. They've both been enucleated. That's the fancy word for the surgery to remove their eyeball, because if they have a tumor in their eyeball or if they've lost sight because of glaucoma and their eyes are painful, we don't take them out unless they're painful.
Okay.
Or, a tumor and there's no other medical way to do it, but it's a cure for pain, and dogs are miraculous about how they get around when they're blind.
Yeah, and so how do you know if the dog's in pain?
Usually they're quiet. They can keep their eyes kind of closed. Like when glaucoma patients are painful, they squint, and they blink a lot and they keep their eyes kind of closed. They can rub on it. They can be snappy if you come near them. They may stop eating a little bit, so they're pretty stoic, but when it's painful, there's definitely some symptoms. And if they're, you can't get the pain. So we have there's dog ophthalmologists.
Okay.
And so just general practitioners can take out eyes, but we always ask owners if they can see their way to go to the ophthalmologist first, because sometimes the ophthalmologist can do injections in the eye to help decrease the pressure. It doesn't necessarily save their vision, but it could. If decreasing the pressures makes them not painful, then maybe they could keep their eye, because it is a little bit odd and a little bit weird to think about a dog with no eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
But
the dogs that I can think of, one was a Shih Tzu, and it grew its hair back and over the, and sometimes you couldn't tell. If the dog can get around blind, and most dogs are pretty good at in their own environment with, routines and things like that without vision, they they're special needs, but it's a doable proposition as long as they're not painful, then that's what we've done to save lives before, and dogs have gone on to live a long time.
Yeah, right. Sure. Okay, well, that's very interesting, and I will put this on Chuck the Pug's Facebook page so that pug owners know that you can squeeze your pug and give him lots of pug kisses.
Right.
The eyeballs are not going to pop out.
Right.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, and we look forward to having you back. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks, Polly. Just let me know anytime.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.